I really considered naming this video Calvin Nerds Saving Kirk Cameron's Saving Christmas. Honestly, it was probably just that takes up too much effort. So this year I actually did get to see Saving Christmas, starring Kirk Cameron, director's Darren Doan. I typically really like Darren Doan films, and so I had shied away from this for a while because of the reviews that are just abysmal. But you know, it's on Amazon Video. I like the filmmaker. Decided to give it a go, and it really isn't nearly as bad as the reviewers say. Honestly, I mean, you take a look at the reviewers, and they're a bunch of non-believers who are watching a film, a Christian film made for Christians, and just saying that this is really bad. It's like, well, it's not really made for you. And so I actually really enjoyed it. I wouldn't say it's a great film. I'd say it's pretty good. You know, if you're looking for something a little bit different to watch this year, you know, something that's going to ask you to think a little bit more deeply about our Christmas traditions, then this might be one to take a look at. The plot and the acting aren't overly great, but you know, it is calling us to do something, and there's something that's pretty worthwhile. So anyways, I watched this, and then I'm flipping back through the reviews and just to catch a glimpse of what people were saying about it when it came out. And one of the reviewers complained that this was the only Christian film that he had ever seen that argued that materialism and gluttony were good things. Honestly, I was a little taken aback by that, and it was. I mean, I understood where he made that journey, but through the argument of the film, I thought it was pretty clear as to what was being said. But you know, these Christian media in general have really focused on the part of Christianity that is, you know, the feeding the poor, the giving sacrificially, the giving of ourselves for each other, and that's definitely a huge part of the Christian faith. Now, I'm not surprised that that's associated with Christianity. It should be. And honestly, we don't do nearly enough of that, right? I mean, you know, that's been the tension in the American church for ages, is that, you know, we don't do these things nearly enough. But what surprised me was that it would surprise him that the Christians in this movie feast, and that he would confuse the feast with gluttony. And as I got to thinking about it, I was like, I don't think that confusion is just with non-believers. I think that, I mean, I've heard enough Christians criticize a feast, criticize the amount of money we spend at Christmas, to know that even with Christians, you know, this is a big push that we need to be not doing these things and instead doing something else. And so thinking about that and knowing that there's enough people who are having this thought process, I thought I should do a video kind of defending Saving Christmas' stance on this. So the first aspect, gluttony versus feasting. You know, the gluttony is most definitely a sin. Gluttony is a sin that I very often struggle with. And I'm fully conscious that that is a sin that needs to be repented of. But that being said, it is one thing to making food your comfort and idol, to engage in the consumption of food not out of gratitude and faith and looking to the Lord for provision, but as whatever it is, a coping mechanism or just habit, or just because you want that sense of repeat, that I like this thing, so I must have 50 more of them. That is one thing. It is a different thing. It's a different thing to gather as a family, as friends, as a church, in thankfulness, in gratitude, in love for one another, and celebrating the provision that God has given us for a feast. And that is not a sin. And in fact, that is encouraged in Scripture. And we've got to keep these things in balance. We are commanded to be a generous people. We are commanded to give to our church, to the poor, and to the widows and orphans, and we are commanded to do what we can for justice, for the unborn, for the people around us. These are things we are called to do, and we are also called to provide for our families, to celebrate, to be thankful of the Lord's favor and the Lord's provision, and to do these things with a joyful heart. And the church has always done these things in feastings, and whether you're part of a liturgical calendar that has particular Christian feast days, like Christmas, like Easter, or if you hold to the more Reformed view, like I do, that Sunday is the real Christian holy day. In either case, the tradition of the church has been to gather together and feast on those days. I'm in the middle of reading Douglas Wilson's God Rest You Merry, and in it he encourages the Sunday dinner, the gathering of extended family together on Sunday as a celebration, as a measure of thankfulness. And we should not be ashamed of these things. This is not a case of gluttony. Gluttony can get away of those very feasts. Don't get me wrong. We are always tempted to go too far in the wonderful gifts that we're given. We're always tempted to do that. But the feast day in and of itself is a wonderful is a wonderful practice that, when done properly, keeps us focused on what God has done for us. And talking about the good things He has given, brings us to the gifts. And I honestly get really sad when I hear people talk about the gifts we give one another as greed and selfishness, and that we could better use that money for the poor. And it really does remind me of the woman who poured the perfume on Jesus' feet, and and it was a very expensive bottle, and Judas is the one that said, hey, how many people can we feed with this? But Jesus did not consider it such. Jesus considered it a good thing. Jesus himself says, as just a statement of fact, not criticizing it, but as a statement of fact, is that, fathers give good gifts to their children. And after becoming a father, that instinct is like always with me. It's like walking through the store. Like I'm going to the grocery store as we can speak right now. I'm going to the grocery store, and I will see something in that grocery store that I think, oh, Christian would love this. Karis would love this. And, and I have to do the little weighing in my head. It's like, this, it's just too much. How much is it? And, I'm not at all suggesting that we should totally break our budget in buying gifts for our kids, but it is seen as a very good thing in Scripture to give good gifts to your children. And that is ultimately, what we are doing at Christmas time is we are giving gifts to one another. Is trying to express our love and appreciation for one another with gifts, and accepting those gifts in that same mode that they were given. That this is a sign of that person's love and of appreciation and of the bond that is between us and our family and our friends and our children and parents. We get really unbalanced sometimes as Christians, and we take things that are very good things, and make them the only thing. And there are a lot of people who do that with one particular issue or another. And at Christmas, we see sometimes the group that has made our care for the poor into the only thing. And that's a huge thing. And us seeking justice for everybody is a huge thing. Us trying to protect the unborn is a huge thing. Our fellowship together is a huge thing. Our Sunday worship is a huge thing. And these are all huge things, but they're not taken in isolation. They can unbalance everything and make you neglect all the things that God has given us. And God has given us a wonderfully full life, a wonderfully full life as a Christian, that we are called to all of these important and wonderful things, and we are expected to be wrapped up in all of it. And some of those things are care for the poor, and some of those things are the way we treat our families. Families being one of the most important themes throughout Scripture. And some of those things are how we fellowship with one another. And some of those things are how we just live our day-to-day lives. And we're not more holy when we don't buy the gift for our kid and instead give it to the poor. And we're not more holy when we neglect the poor to give stuff to our kids. And the Lord has called us to both of those things. And how that plays out is dependent on where the Lord has put you and your family, the needs that are there, the needs in the community. And it's going to play out differently for all of us. So, after all that is simply my call, is for us to not neglect, the thankful feasting, and the giving of good gifts. Just because these are not things that we normally hear about in sermons. You know, we are in a season where the preaching is much more focused on fasting than feasting, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. You know, in very recent years, the church has been much more inclined to feasting than fasting, but you know, we sometimes overreact, and we sometimes tip the scales the other way. And when I see secular film reviewers shocked that a Christian would advocate a feast, I think that's a very good indication that the scales have gone way too far in the other way. So, long story short, this Christmas, this Sunday, and both of them are landing on the same day this year, very providentially. You know, let this be a feast day unto the Lord. Gather with whoever you can, if it's family, if it's friends, if it's your, members of your church. Gather together and celebrate what the Lord has done for you. Give good gifts to those nearby. Get with your family and give and receive with a joyful heart, knowing that the Lord in heaven knows what you need, and He provides it. And for that, we should be eternally thankful. And this season should, if anything, remind us of those precious truths. God bless and have a Merry Christmas.